Okay, we have two more aberrations, and we're going to talk about them together real quick. We have distortion and chromatic aberration. So, distortion is when our magnification varies with our distance from our optical axis. And there are two types of this. There's barrel distortion, where our magnification decreases with our distance from our optical axis. So you can kind of see here these these are technically straight lines, these buildings, but as we move away from our optical axis, the buildings appear to move closer together. These lines are not, they should be straight lines that look like they're moving closer together due to perspective, but they're not. They're actually curved, right? Because our magnification is increasing, or sorry, decreasing with distance from our optical axis. On the right-hand side, we have a pincushion distortion, which is the opposite effect. Our magnification is increasing with our distance from our optical axis. So you can kind of see here is a line of symmetry, and here's a line of symmetry. So our center of our optical axis is roughly here. And as we move away from our optical axis, our magnification increases. And what that does is it causes our straight lines to curve away from the center of our uh, optical axis, or curve away from our optical axis. Whereas with a barrel, they're curving towards our optical axis. So here, like I said, our magnification increases with height. And what that means is that, normally our magnification is equal to, for a single lens, negative SI over SO, which is, we learned originally was equal to HI over HO, which is equal to our magnification, right? Some constant. They don't necessarily have to be equal, but now HI over HO is not equal to a constant. HI HI over HO is equal to some function of HO, some function of our object, our height of our object. And by height, we always mean our distance from our optical axis, right? Because our objects can exist in two dimensions, and H is always our distance from the optical axis. So like I said, this is caused by uneven vertical magnification, and is typically something that you come across when you have wide fields of view. You'll see this a lot now in cameras that are attached to phones and other devices where they want a wide field of view in order to see lots of stuff. You'll see lots of barrel distortion, actually. Um, and they'll often correct that with software in post-processing. And then that's just because you can't put many lenses in your camera. You just don't have the space for them in order to correct for these. So the last aberration we're going to talk about is chromatic aberration, which is caused by dispersion. Which, if you remember from the very beginning of class, dispersion is the variation in index of refraction with wavelength. And you guys actually saw this aberration in your second deliverable, right? When you were asked to say what would happen if we switched from a red LED to a blue LED. Well, the focal lengths of all your lenses would change, and so you have to change the distances just a little bit in order to correct for that. Well, the consequence of this is, if you look at this image right here, focal lengths change, which means magnifications change, right? And if magnifications change, that means that in this case, our blue light, which you can see right here, has a lower magnification than our red light. So we get a rainbow effect where blue is occurring closer. We don't know if this is the optical axis or not. This is a subset of an image. So I can't say which has a higher magnification, which has a lower magnification. But they have different magnifications. So the blue is appearing on the left-hand side, and then we have red appearing on the right-hand side. And so you get a rainbow effect. You get a rainbow effect. You used to see this a lot with, you guys probably don't even remember these, but you used to be able to buy these disposable point and shoot cameras where you would take a picture and then send it into the, you would just drop it off at a, some of you could send in the mail, and some of you could just drop off at a like a Walgreens, and you would get pictures back. And so you didn't have to own a camera and do the whole, all that stuff. You would just buy one of these and then get pictures back. You would, so it was a disposable camera. Interestingly enough, those only had a single lens in them. And because they only had a single lens, they couldn't correct for the chromatic aberration. Because to correct for chromatic aberration, you have to be able to use multiple lenses with different indices of refraction. And I should say this, you don't have to, but it's much easier when you do that. So if we scroll back up to our achromat and plan achromat microscope objectives, by the way, the thing you're looking at is down here, my little point right there, kind of going like this. You'll notice that they have multiple doublet lenses, and these doublet lenses help dramatically with correcting chromatic aberration because they're made out of two different materials with two different indices of refraction and two different behaviors, two different dispersions. So the way that they behave, their indexes of refraction behave with respect to wavelength differs. And you can use that difference in behavior to partially correct for chromatic aberration. You'll notice that this is not a result of the nonlinearity of Snell's law, right? And so the things you use to correct for chromatic aberration don't work necessarily as well as the stuff, don't also correct for spherical aberration unless you're purposefully doing that. And as we'll see when we talk about stock lenses that you buy from like Thor Labs or something like that, the extra freedom you have with a doublet, having an extra interface and an extra index of refraction actually allows you to dramatically correct for spherical aberration, things like that. So that's chromatic aberration. Now let's briefly talk about some typical methods for correcting aberrations that are used in lens systems. And they can basically be summed up by saying symmetry helps a lot, as well as the use of meniscus lenses. So here we have a triplet system where we have a positive, negative, positive lens. And you notice they're not all the same focal length, but we do have, for example, but the symmetry comes from having the same type of lens mirrored across the center plane, right? So a lens triplet system will have can have better aberrations, more corrected aberrations. A double Gauss is actually a fairly common system that you'll see where you have meniscus lens, positive lens cemented to a negative lens, and then negative lens cemented, so a doublet, right? These are doublets with another positive lens on the right-hand side. And you can see that some of these get quite complicated. But the important thing is that quasi-symmetric lens systems tend to correct coma, distortion, and chromatic aberration. And alternating and adding positive and negative lenses can correct spherical aberration and field curvature. And then adding different lens materials like are here where we have different indices of refraction helps correct chromatic aberration. So yeah, we're not going to expect you guys to design systems like this or even like this, but it's really good to know. And in the next lecture where we talk about measuring optical systems, I'll show you where I used symmetry in my research to design an optical system that had greatly reduced aberration. So, all right.